These are the 5 episodes where the worst things Cartman did to Kyle are shown. And that involves a lot more than just insulting his religion. At number 1 is The Passion of the Jew from Season 8, an episode in which Cartman becomes obsessed with the film The Passion and uses its content to promote anti-Semitic sentiments, directing much of his hatred towards Kyle, managing to completely confuse him. The boys play in Cartman's yard, and Eric is particularly inspired with the insults.
You see, guys, this is why you don't bring Jews along on the away team. They don't play along.
And the long list of insults is just beginning. When Kyle tries to get Cartman to stop insulting him for being Jewish, Eric explains that he has seen Mel Gibson's film The Passion 34 times. And that is basically where he gets his arguments against Jews from.
You haven't seen it once. There's even one part where the Jews have a chance to save Jesus, and you know what they do? They let Barabbas, a serial killer, go free instead and laugh about it.
For some reason, even though it's a historical fact, when told by Cartman, it just doesn't feel right at all. That's how Eric somehow pressures Kyle to go see the movie and check out for himself the supposed theory about people hating his religion. Kyle goes to the movies and discovers that his worst nightmare has come true. Cartman was right about what he said, or at least partly so. So he ends up doing something he never thought he would have to do.
You were right? One more time, Kyle.
No one is happy that Cartman's evil is winning over Kyle. No one. After that announcement, Cartman feels that a part of his being has found what it needs to put into action, a master plan that has as its main objective to harm all the Jews in the world, and of course Kyle.
The truth. From this day forward, I will dedicate my life to making sure your film is seen by everyone. I will organize the masses so that we may do thy bidding. Hail, Mel Gibson. Amen.
Twisting things into the macabre is Cartman's daily specialty, and boy does he know how to serve it up. Meanwhile, Stan and Kenny go to see the movie, think it's horrible, and want their money back.
We go to church to learn that stuff. We go to movies to be entertained. We weren't entertained and we want our money back.
The salesman refuses, and they somehow end up believing that the best way to get their money back is to ask Mel Gibson himself, even though it's the last thing anyone would think of. So they call the fan club number and end up talking to none other than Mel Gibson's biggest agent in town.
Mel Gibson's The Passion fan club.
And after an unpleasant exchange of insults, Cartman reveals Mel Gibson's residence to them and thus determines the boys' next destination.
Come on, Kenny, we're going to Malibu.
On the other hand, Kyle has been totally poisoned by Cartman's beliefs. He is immersed in nightmares and remorse about the horrors that the Jews committed against Jesus. Have you ever wondered what would happen if Cartman used his strategies and manipulation for good? No. It's not something I can even imagine. As Kyle suffers the consequences of listening to Cartman, Cartman takes his fan club to the next level. And of course it's not good at all. Innocent people flock to Cartman's yard thinking it's a meeting to talk about the positive ways the movie affected them. But they end up being evilly manipulated by the kid, obviously dressed as a Nazi.
But I think it's best we don't talk out loud about it until we have most of them on the trains heading to the camps.
A clear example of why you shouldn't join a fan club, led by Eric Cartman. In Malibu, Stan and Kenny get Mel Gibson's house, only to find out the truth, that he's completely crazy.
Do your worst! You still won't get your ticket money back. I can take whatever you can dish out.
Portraying Mel as a torture lover doesn't seem far-fetched, considering that The Passion is 2 intense hours of non-stop torture that traumatized more people than it actually changed spiritually. South Park is right about that. Stan and Kenny manage to get their ticket money back, albeit against Mel's will, who begins a chase against them.
Kapla! Kapla! And good evening, friends!
Kyle continues to live his own torture and decides to talk to Father Maxey, who advises him that if he wants to stop feeling that guilt, he must follow the path of Jesus and atone for his sins.
Wait, that's it. Atonement. Of course. I know what I have to do now. Thank you, Father.
Perhaps Kyle forgot to mention one small detail, that he was being manipulated by the biggest anti-Semite in history, after Hitler, for example. Kyle does what he feels is the right thing to do, and at the mosque, he decides to explain to the rest of the community that they should apologize to Jesus?
then we can still apologize for the brutal way in which he was killed and take our share of the responsibility for it.
Of course, everyone immediately blames the movie and starts a second chase to get it removed from theaters for the anti-Semitism it causes. Although, in reality, it's not the movie, but Cartman's interpretation of the movie. And we all know that his interpretations are the worst, especially considering that he marches down the street with an army of fanatics making a Nazi chant, without them even knowing it.
Juden ausrotten!
Es ist Zeit für Reich!
Wir müssen die Juden ausrotten!
One bad apple is enough to ruin the rest. Finally, the Jewish community goes to the cinema to demand that the film be removed from the billboards, but Kyle remains traumatized by the effects of a very well-executed manipulation.
No, don't become an angry mob. The last time we did that, we killed Jesus.
And the moment has arrived, a discussion begins on whether or not the film generates anti-Semitism, and Mel Gibson himself arrives to show the truth.
Torturing me! Ah! Oh, my nipples are so tender, don't squeeze them anymore!
Okay, as things get increasingly weirder, fans of the film are realizing that they may have been admiring the wrong person. Twice, in fact.
He's not quite as eloquent as I had pictured.
Kyle finally realizes that there's no way he'll interpret the movie the same way after meeting Mel Gibson. And Stan gives some great insight into what Christianity really means, even though it cost him being chased by a completely insane pain lover.
Focusing on how he got killed is what people did in the Dark Ages, and it ends up with really bad results.
Stan saves the day, which of course means Cartman's plans are foiled, and Kyle reverts to his natural state of no longer trusting anything Eric has to tell him.
No, come on, people, we're so close to completing my final solution!
I love happy endings, don't you? Continuing with the following episodes, although one might think that the only reason Cartman bothers Kyle is because of his religion, the truth is that the main fixation Cartman has with Kyle is that he accepts that he is right about basically, well, everything. In season 11, Cartman spends 3 entire episodes stalking Kyle, basically trying to get him to fulfill a bet they made that ultimately no one else would want to fulfill in his place. So, the boys and other classmates go through the forest to check another of Cartman's strange theories, the existence of Leprechaun.
It isn't a story, it's true. I saw a leprechaun. I've seen him come through here 3 days in a row now.
Why Cartman spent 3 days in a row visiting the forest is something we will never know. The thing is, if Cartman proves that there is a leprechaun in that forest, Kyle will have to do what Cartman wants, and that means losing his own dignity.
We have a deal, Kyle. If I can prove there's a leprechaun, you have to suck my balls, remember?
Unfortunately for Kyle, the leprechaun does appear, but his capture only makes things worse.
I was sent to warn of a terrorist attack, but you boys have made me late. Now the terrorists will prevail. The end is near.
Although no one understands what the leprechaun is talking about, it seems that something very bad is about to happen. But Cartman only cares about one thing.
Kyle, suck my balls.
This is the beginning of a trilogy in which Cartman has only one goal: to humiliate Kyle just to be right. And as we know, he won't stop until he has achieved his goal. He is Cartman after all. Stan, Butters, Jimmy, Kenny, and Kyle are playing in the snow until a mysterious man approaches them to ask if they have seen the leprechaun and to talk to them about what is imaginary and what is real.
Well, of course they are. But just because they're imaginary doesn't mean they aren't real.
And that's when the boys do absolutely everything that horror movies warn them not to do and end up getting into a hot air balloon with a strange and colorful man who assures them that he will not hurt them.
Watch it, fellas. I'm pretty sure this guy wants to rape us.
Butters takes the prize for voice of reason this time, and despite his warnings, they end up traveling with the man to a place he calls Imagination Land.
Imagination, imagination.
This is how the boys end up in Imagination Land, and I know how this sounds, like everyone consumed all the stuff on Randy's farm. But no, it's the place where all the things humans have ever imagined live. The fun part is short-lived, however, when the terrorist the leprechaun warned them about shows up and basically blows the place to bits. But what did they expect after having delayed that leprechaun? Anyway, the boys are completely stunned, and their only way out is the dragon Draco, who manages to get them all out safely, or well, almost all of them.
Hold on, fellas!
Butters!
Don't leave me, fellas! Come back!
Kyle wakes up in his bed as if it were all a dream. But when he talks to Stan, he realizes that his visit to Imagination Land was real. And therefore, it is also true that they are the worst friends in history for having abandoned Butters.
Why?
Our darling Butters never came home last night.
Dude.
The terrorist attack on Imagination Land appears to be more serious than it appeared, and the government seems to know everything about the place and the attack. So they decide to take matters into their own hands and identify how they can proceed with the counterattack. Because of course, a war between Lollipop Kings, Teddy Bears, and Ronald McDonald's is the concern of the state's armed forces.
In times like these, the government often turns to Hollywood for help. You creative filmmakers can think of ideas we just can't.
That's why so many of the government's tactics bear suspicious similarities to Hollywood movies. Who would have thought? After ideas about future werewolves from the mind of Shyamalan and crashing meteors from Michael Bay, surprisingly the one who provides the answer that is needed is a close acquaintance of Kyle and the boys.
How about this? You have that videotape that the terrorists made, right? Well, maybe if you did a background check on that videotape, you might find somebody who doesn't belong. Somebody who doesn't fit in Imagination Land. Oh!
I didn't see that coming though. Finally, and thanks to Mel Gibson, who would have thought, the government realizes that Butters is not an imaginary character, and they decide to investigate his friends until they find Stan and Kyle. However, Kyle has a problem. Let's say, much more rounded.
I've given him ample time to fulfill his obligation, and he has thus refused. I stand before you with dry balls, Your Honor.
Cartman has had to be brought to trial for many of the things he has committed, but that doesn't seem to matter to him. And once again, being right and in control over Kyle is more important.
Thank you, Your Honor. This isn't a victory for me. This is a victory for the justice system. And my boss.
It would be a good time to flee town, change his name, and dye his hair, right, Kyle? However, Kyle is saved by the bell when the government takes him and Stan away to do research on Butters, even if it means leaving a very upset Cartman without having accomplished his goal. What a mess! In Imagination Land, Butters tries to end the war peacefully and fails, revealing that the terrorists are ready to unleash the evil side of their imagination, and that Cartman is not going to let a world conflict keep him from bothering Kyle. Well, we couldn't expect anything less from an episode that shows the worst that Cartman has done to Kyle. And it's just beginning. In the next episode of the trilogy, the evil part of imagination escapes from its side of Imagination Land, and even that fails to be as terrifying as Cartman stalking Kyle. At the Pentagon, the government tries to get information out of Stan and Kyle, but they end up revealing more information themselves.
Our portal to the imagination built as a secret project back in 1962 to fight the Soviets.
Tom! That's super secret!
This is how the boys end up in front of the portal built by the Pentagon, and discover that the way to make it work is by singing the same song that the mayor sang in the balloon, who would say that listening to a horrible song would help them save their friend.
Imagination, imagination.
Although they are just as out of tune as the mayor, they can't hit the right notes. And meanwhile, Butters discovers that his only option is to go to Castle Sunshine to seek help. But along the way, he finds himself face to face with the cruelty of evil imagination.
Please, let me go.
Oh man, come on. How evil do you have to be to hurt Strawberry Shortcake? At the Pentagon, Kyle and Stan manage to hit the right note and manage to open the portal, sending some soldiers and... Kurt Russell?
I don't understand why I'm here. I'm just an actor.
However, they are interrupted by Cartman's fantastic entrance and his courtroom win, where Kyle is ordered to keep his signed word, and everyone seems to agree with it.
You signed an agreement, kid. We don't have time for this. Go on and do it.
A great example of how just because something is done the right way doesn't mean it's good. Meanwhile, Kurt Russell and the rest end up meeting a terrible fate in Imagination Land, resulting in Cartman and Kyle being interrupted again by a general call.
No, we're not done in here yet.
Everyone to the main hall now!
Unfortunately, the Pentagon forgot that if they can go to Imagination Land, they can go to them from there. But I guess they didn't see that coming, just like the many UFO sightings they have denied, right? This is how a man-bear-pig arrives at the premises and starts destroying everything.
Reverse the doorway, send it back through!
And well, this is where everything really goes overboard. Man-Bear-Pig squeezes Kyle to death, and the portal sucks Stan in before taking the evil character with it as well. Definitely one of the strangest and scariest sequences in the series. But Kyle's death brings with it a touching moment in which Cartman does everything in his power to bring him back.
God damn it, Carl! You never walked away from anything in your life! Now fight! 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 Right now!
We already suspected that if Cartman was trying to do good things with his great will to get what he wants, and that is how he somehow saves Kyle from death and has a nice emotional moment together.
Get him some air. There you go. Easy. Breathe easy.
Oh. Of course we don't believe such kindness on his part. And deep down, we know that a dead Kyle is a Kyle who can't keep his promise. So I'm sorry, Cartman. But everyone here knows your true intentions.
Wake up, Kyle.
And even though Cartman has softened your heart with his little fake tears, the third episode shows that those tears were from losing the bet and not from real concern.
What else goes on a Sunday besides hot fudge, whipped cream, and... Oh, that's right! My balls!
There you have it. But while Cartman hasn't stopped thinking about the bet, in Imagination Land, Butters is preparing with Aslan and the rest of the Imaginaries to face an epic battle against the evil Imaginary. And although Butters doesn't know it yet, he is the key to ending the war.
What powers? I don't understand.
You are real. You are a creator. That means you can imagine things into existence here.
Thank goodness it wasn't Eric who was left in Imagination Land, otherwise they would be lost. Anyway, the government prepares to bomb Imaginary after it was declared not real, which brings bittersweet relief to Kyle.
This, of course, overturns any imagination-based verdicts in the past, including the famous Cartman v. Broflovski ball-sucking case.
And although it seems that he has finally been saved from Cartman's harassment, Stan begs him to do something to stop the bombing, even if that means, precisely, having to give in to his worst enemy.
Well, you have to convince them they are real. No way, dude. Then I'd have to suck Cartman's balls.
After a long intervention with characters like Jesus, Luke Skywalker, Superman, and even God, Kyle has a difficult decision to make. His dignity or the lives of his friends, and we all know what he's going to choose.
I mean, whether Jesus is real or not, he's had a bigger impact on the world than any of us have. And the same can be said for Bugs Bunny and Superman and Harry Potter. They've changed my life, changed the way I act on the earth. Doesn't that make them kind of real?
And for the second time, he signs his sentence.
So, Kyle, imaginary things are real, huh? Guess that means I did win the bet after all. And you know what that means, Gab.
But repeating the same threat for 3 episodes seems to make it lose its effect, and Kyle ends up putting Cartman in his place by making it clear that that bet will never be fulfilled.
That I am never sucking your balls. You got that? They can throw me in jail for the rest of my life, but I am never going to suck your balls, ever. So there!
That's my boy. And when it seems like everything is resolved, Al Gore ends up sending everyone along with the missile to destroy Imagination Land. Luckily, Butters survives the impact and manages to bring them all back, which makes me wonder, does that mean they're all Butters' imaginary friends now? This already managed to confuse me. And although everyone is happy that everything is back to normal, there is someone who cannot waste the opportunity to achieve the goal he has been pursuing for 3 long episodes.
Oh, why look, it's me! And there's Kyle! And what's Kyle about to do?
I think that in some way, everyone ended up happy, except for the image of Kyle and Butters, who even though he saved the world, is still punished.
Shit.
What a way to end the trilogy. But surprisingly or not, this is not the last time Cartman seeks revenge and harms Kyle, like when he infected him with HIV just because he was making fun of him. It seems like no one learns the lesson of not messing with Eric Cartman. The episode begins with Cartman finding out that he needs to have his tonsils removed.
It's a very simple operation. We'll just put you to sleep, Eric, and when you wake up, you'll be tonsil-free.
But in reality, everything goes horribly wrong. And Cartman ends up infected with an even worse disease.
No, this is a joke, right? This is a joke. I can't have AIDS!
After so many racist, xenophobic jokes and mocking multiple disabilities, Eric is finally on the other side of the story. Isn't that ironic?
How you doing, Eric? You know,
Well, I think you're a real special little guy. And even though you have AIDS, I ain't gonna act any different towards you.
But against all odds, a small seed of evil and satisfaction is born in Kyle's heart, and he ends up completely making fun of the situation. Cartman takes his illness more seriously than one would expect, and even becomes an ambassador to make people understand that AIDS is just as important as cancer, even though it doesn't raise the same amount of money.
Well, that's just great. Of all the times to get AIDS, I get it right when everyone stops giving a crap.
But Kyle continues to make fun of him, and we all know that there are two things that Cartman does not forgive: being made fun of, and, well, being made fun of twice.
Nobody deserves this illness, Stan. Kenny, nobody. It's awful. And maybe somebody needs to teach Kyle how to have some compassion.
Cartman, with the help of his innocent lackey Butters, makes good on his threat and infects Kyle so that he stops making fun of his illness.
I'm not just sure, Butters. I'm HIV positive.
Don't be mistaken, his illness, his jokes. But Kyle doesn't find it so funny when the doctor suggests that he got infected in the classic way.
Little boy, have you been having unprotected anal sex?
And even though no health professional in South Park is quite the professional, Kyle immediately knows that all of this can mean only one thing.
I'm gonna kill you, Cartman!
I don't blame him, and although Cartman tries to justify himself by saying that he did it to teach him a lesson, we all know that his reality is distorted, and his lessons always go too far. Principal Victoria calls them out on their behavior, and Cartman shows that he partly did it as revenge for being teased. But on the other hand, he seems to enjoy not going through it alone.
Well, Kyle, I guess we're even now. Should we just call it a truce? Kyle?
But Kyle's anger is overflowing, and he decides to break everything that Cartman loves. And, of course, I'm referring to his Mel Gibson poster.
Kyle! Kyle, hold on, you asshole!
When the decisive moment arrives, and Kyle is about to break his beloved Xbox, Cartman reveals to him an absurd and unfounded investigation that he conducts on the internet.
No, all right, Kyle. Magic Johnson, Kyle. The key is Magic Johnson.
Well, that might make some sense, at least for Cartman. Now the mood has changed from one filled with hate and revenge to one filled with hate and the search for Magic Johnson. After unsuccessfully trying to get in as AIDS patients, they end up sneaking onto a plane as cancer patients.
Yeah, well, at least it's not as bad as having AIDS. AIDS is the worst disease.
And even though Kyle sees it as one of the worst things Cartman has ever done to him, somehow in Cartman's twisted mind, it all seems like a journey of two friends fighting the same disease together. Cartman needs to stop watching movies immediately. Back at Magic Johnson's mansion, the boys make the astonishing discovery that what keeps Magic's illness from progressing is money.
You sleep with money? Every night?
Yeah, I like to keep it close. You don't think that...
Why does this not surprise me? So they discover that money shrinks disease cells, and so they decide to do the only thing that seems most logical. Shot cash directly into the bloodstream could kill the virus altogether. I'm not even going to ask if that's minimally hygienic, because it's not, and just in case the experiment doesn't work, Cartman decides to make amends for his mistakes and take the initiative.
Yeah, well, if there's a chance of being cured of this illness, then Kyle is willing to take that risk.
You didn't think it was going to be a good idea, did you? In the end, all the boys' efforts and Magic Johnson's hundreds of dollars cured them, making the episode's message very clear. The only thing that can save you from illness is money. Oh, and of course, never ever make fun of Eric Cartman.
I'm still breaking your Xbox.
What? No!
It's definitely a story that never ends. Kyle makes fun of Cartman, and Cartman does everything in his power to put him in the worst possible situations. That's what their friendship is about.